Benjamin Netanyahu's autobiography.
Dope. I can't wait to read that,
I
dude.
finished
I
Benjamin
should do that.
Netanyahu's autobiography, which is like 1,200 pages or
Oh
something.
my God.
I finished it in September
I'm not reading
2023.
I'm not reading that.
You should read it because the great thing about someone writing a book like that is they think they're the good guy in the story and they reveal themselves unknowingly throughout the pages.
Bet. But that's still true anyway. Nima Shirazi in The Phantom Menaces, the article by Nima Shirazi has proof for all of his claims in there. I can recommend you that. But so anyway, the Ayatollah wanted rid of Saddam. America got rid of Saddam for him. And then not only that, W. Bush took the Iranian-backed parties, the Supreme Islamic Council and the Dawa Party, to power in Baghdad. They were doing exactly what Iran wanted. So America's post 9/11 foreign policy is right up the Ayatollah's alley. He has every reason to want to cooperate with us. Then what happens is there's an Al-Qaeda terrorist attack in Saudi Arabia, and the neoconservatives convinced W. Bush that Iran did it, and that that the attack was organized by Al-Qaeda in Iran, backed by the Ayatollah's regime.
So who did it?
So now it was the Bin Ladenites that did it. So, but they convinced him that so that, and he bought it because he's an idiot. And so that completely destroyed the cooperation, the spirit of cooperation between the United States and Iran on our joint goals. Again, they hated the Taliban, they hated Saddam, they hated Osama. There's every reason in the world that we can use them to help with our goals and vice versa here, as from the administration's point of view, except for the neoconservatives, in other words, the Likud, the American Likud. And so Iraq War II ends up benefiting Iran immensely. But anyway, so we'll skip Syria and all that because it's part of that story. But on the nuclear program, because this is the major conflict between Israel and Iran. In 2002, in the State of the Union, Bush declared that Iran was part of the axis of evil. Now, this term was written up by David Frum, who was the lickspittle of Richard Pearl, co-author of The Clean Break with David Wormser. And they said Iran, Iraq, and North Korea represent an axis of evil, and heavily implying that they're all tied to Osama bin Laden and the terrorists who hit us on September 11th as well. Now, first of all, just think of how absurd it is.
Of course.
That they want us to believe that Osama bin Laden is in an alliance with Saddam Hussein and the Ayatollah and Kim Jong-il.
No, that's like the Cowboys, Giants, and Eagles being It makes no sense.
So, but the thing is also, it's obvious too, isn't it? That the only reason they didn't put Syria in there was because then it'd be too obvious that this is Ariel Sharon and Benjamin Netanyahu talking. So that was why they put North Korea in there, just because it's far away. But that also really throws your whole Axis thing into doubt too, when North Korea had sold some missiles to Iran before, but they had no real alliance. They're not part of anything. Anyway, so that's a major step back in our relations with Iran and with everybody else at that time. Now, Saddam Hussein said, man, I'm unarmed. Here's my 12,000 page dossier. Don't shoot. And America just bulldozed right in there anyway. Kim, I'll skip the story. Kim said, screw you guys, I'm making nukes. And he made nukes in North Korea. We ain't messed with him since, or his son. The Ayatollah said, especially as long as you're busy in Iraq, I'm getting going on my nuclear program. But it's a civilian program protected by the Non-Proliferation Treaty and our safeguards agreement with the International Atomic Energy Agency. So we're making a civilian program to produce electricity. Our books are wide open. You have no excuse to invade because we're not making a nuclear bomb. The previous Ayatollah said we're not making a nuclear bomb. It's haram, forbidden by God. And the new Ayatollah says the same thing too. We're not doing it. On the other hand, though, let's not anybody be naive. They are mastering the fuel cycle, and they're proving that they have the capability to make nuclear weapons. They're making what you call a latent nuclear deterrent. And they did that legally. That's part of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, is that any country that signs, any non-nuclear weapon state that signs that treaty has a right to nuclear technology for peaceful purposes. And so they were essentially attempting to achieve the capability, what you would call as a threshold state, which is the same as Japan, Germany, and Brazil. Everybody knows they've mastered the fuel cycle. They could make an atom bomb, but so don't push them into making an atom bomb. And that was essentially the nature of America's standoff, and on Israel's behalf mostly. But America's and Israel's standoff with Iran for the last 25 years, since early W. Bush years, or well, let's say 20 years really, because 2005 was when they revealed the Natanz facility. They didn't really begin spinning centrifuges till I think the end of that year, maybe beginning of 2006. And then, so W. Bush put maximum pressure and got sanctions, got the Europeans to add sanctions and do all these things to try to force them to just completely abandon the thing, refused to negotiate with them in good faith through the end of his presidency. Barack Obama comes in and he's got Netanyahu is sworn in as prime minister again, right before he's sworn in. The poor son of a bitch. And I hate Barack Obama. I hate to have any sympathy for the guy whatsoever. But for this, imagine you are elected president of the United States of America 2 months after Benjamin Netanyahu comes back to power as prime minister of Israel, dude. Have you ever? What a bump. No matter who you are. I would even sympathize with William Jefferson Clinton over that. And in fact, the first time that Clinton met with Netanyahu, he met with him for half an hour in 96.
Yeah.
And then the story was that he came out of there breathless and said, who does the F does this guy think he is? Who's the superpower and who's the client state?
Right.
Right, because Netanyahu just talked to Clinton like he was the butler. Look, bitch, shine my shoes and give me a nuclear whatever.
He tends to do that to
anything, dude. God, that guy.
Yeah. Clinton also spent a lot of, he had like political action committees. I don't know if that's the official term you want to use for it, but there were basically like shadow committees working against electing Netanyahu in the first place. And then I believe he worked against it again in 99 and was successful.
Really? What book do I read about that? I like that. I didn't
You want to know?
that.
You want to know what book?
I hate Bill Clinton so much, and you're like telling me a reason to actually like
what book you should read that in? Benjamin Netanyahu's autobiography.
Dope. I can't wait to read that,
I finished Benjamin Netanyahu's autobiography, which is like 1,200 pages or something. Oh my God. I finished it in September 2023.
I'm not reading that.
You should read it because the great thing about someone writing a book like that is they think they're the good guy in the story and they reveal themselves unknowingly throughout the pages. I learned everything I need to know about the guy and what a sociopath he is reading that book. It's funny you bring up the Barack Obama thing though, because Barack Obama, I'm not a fan of his presidency and he was particularly awful on pretty much all things foreign policy. That said, he was the best president we have ever had by a mile on managing the Israel relationship. In so many ways. And
I gotta disagree with that, but I'm willing to listen, I guess.
If you don't believe me, read Netanyahu's book and see the fucking thorn in his side. The only reason Israel got some things done is because Netanyahu had a backdoor to his old buddy Joe Biden. And even though they had political disagreements, they got along.
Yeah.
That is why some things got done. But Barack Obama, the very first meeting he ever had with Netanyahu was like all excited to meet him. He walked in, wagged his finger in Netanyahu's face and said, "No more settlements, Bibi." Those were the first words out of his mouth. And it's like, that's like a breath of fresh air. Like, when the fuck has a president ever done that?
Yeah, but the history of Obama's presidency is he gave his big Cairo speech and he said, we're going to do a two-state solution. We're going to do a two-state solution. We're going to do it. We're not going to do a two-state solution. What we're going to do is we're going to do an Iran nuclear deal. We're going to do an Iran nuclear deal. And he spent the entire rest of his presidency to get the Iran nuclear deal.
Which was
and he completely screwed the Palestinians and did nothing for the Palestinians whatsoever, completely backed down from that. And then on the nuclear deal, he got a deal that was easy enough for Trump to simply withdraw from with the stroke of a pen a couple of years later.
The deal was terrible. It was a joke.
It wasn't that bad, but
he had his fucking speechwriter write it, which tells you all you need to know.
No, that's not true.
Ben Rhodes wrote the fucking nuclear deal. Who else wrote it?
Well, John Kerry and his guys, and plus, what's his name with the funny hair from the energy department? Was do you remember his name? The guy with the really bad comb over. There was a huge team of people who worked on that.
I'm sure other people contributed, but I'm saying like...
And Ben Rhodes was the deputy national security advisor. I don't mean to give the guy credit for anything, but he was a speechwriter. That was where he came from,
Yeah, let's call it what it is. Right?
But the deal, if you read the deal, what the deal actually did was it severely rolled back Iran's program. It made it where Fordo was a research facility only, no production. They poured concrete in the Iraq heavy water reactor. They shut down like 2/3 of the centrifuges spinning at Natanz. And the only thing about it, and they expanded the inspections regime so that the Americans and the IAEA could inspect even sites where everyone agreed there were no nuclear materials or any overt proof that there were nuclear materials or nuclear machines or machines that could accept nuclear materials in any of those places. In other words, in military bases where, and then the deal was on the UN Security Council, America and their friends, the American government and its friends outvote the Russians and the Chinese, right? We got America, France, and Britain versus Russia and China. And there was no veto power on this. So if America, Britain, and France agreed that there was something in Iran they wanted to search, there was nothing Russia and China could do about that. And the Iranians, as long as they had a good reason to show, then the Iranians had to let them inspect even military sites, which is far beyond any inspections regime that any country has ever had by a million miles. And all the hype about, oh yeah, but explain these molecules here and explain this sample there. All of that has been bullshit. All of it has been debunked over and over again, from the implosion testing at Parchin and all of this stuff. I mean, I spent years on this stuff, and every one of those, the IAEA is raising very serious questions about a sample that seems to reveal an isotope of this or that. None of that is meaningful. None of that has traced back to any illicit or secret parallel nuclear weapons program of any kind. And so what happened was, at the time that they did the deal, it was as though the Non-Proliferation Treaty never existed. It was as though no one had ever heard of the Safeguards Agreement or the IAEA inspections regime there. It's like we're all just pretending that none of that is going on. And as far as we know, Iran is making nuclear bombs right now. And so Israel might just have to bomb them. And I think Obama was legitimately worried that Israel was going to do what they did last June and just go ahead and start the war. And in fact, you can find this if you want. Zbigniew Brzezinski said that if Israel tries to fly over Iraq to bomb Iran, Obama should shoot them down. He wasn't exactly tight with the neocons, only on Russia, but not on Iran and Israel policy.
What I'm saying is it's a low bar, Scott. But comparatively speaking, obviously with the Cairo speech and saying he would get the two-state, he didn't do that, to be clear. Like, not even
he
close.
backed down on that.
Not even close. But like, he's the only guy, the only fucking president I can point to in modern history who actually was willing to be like, fuck you.
No, that's not true.
When something didn't make sense.
Why do you think Bush Sr. was a one-term president? Let's force them to do this thing right now. The two-state solution. This is our chance. And then they were gone.
I'm unaware of that.
And Bush himself blamed the Israel lobby for his defeat in 1992. George W. Bush and Colin Powell tried to do the two-state solution after September 11th, until Tom DeLay came to town and said, we'll turn the entire evangelical Christian right against you, and you'll be a one-term president just like your old dad.
Yeah, so he started the wars.
And so he backed down.
Yeah.
And so Barack Obama, he went a bit further. But yes, it's true that the deal, it wasn't a treaty. He wasn't able to get a treaty through. Israel has too much control of this country for that. And so it was an agreement that Donald Trump was able to simply tear right up in 2018, which set us on the path for the current conflict, even though there's so much hype about this. It drives me crazy. People go, like Mike Baker went on a certain major podcast and said, well, what do you think 60% might mean? Or something like, why are we doing hypotheticals here? What are we talking about? He and Marco Rubio both said, like, well, the only countries with 60% enriched uranium have nuclear bombs. That doesn't mean anything. What are you talking about?
Explain that?
We all know, yes, a nuclear an atom bomb made with uranium has to be approximately 90% uranium-235. That's the sweet stuff, not the 238. That's why you spin it in centrifuges. You take the ore, you refine it, you convert it to uranium hexafluoride gas. Then you spin it in the cascades of centrifuges till you get all the 238 goes to the outside and the 235 stays to the inside. And that's the stuff that at 3.6% uranium-235. Oh, and then you convert it back to a metal for introduction into your reactors. So at 3.6%, you use that for your electricity. At 20%, you can use those for targets for your medical isotope reactors. Above that, you're getting toward nuclear weapons grade material, right? But so then Mike Baker goes, 60%, What are you talking about, Mike? They stopped at 60. They didn't go to 90. They're not making weapons fuel. What, in fact, are they doing? They are making bargaining chips for negotiations. They're trying to build up something to give away. And what's the history of the 60%? The history of the 60% is that Donald Trump tore up the deal in 2018. Then in December of 2020, in Trump's lame duck period, the Israelis, through the MEK Mujahideen cult, communist terrorist cult, did this machine gun attack and killed Fakhrizadeh, who was the leader of the Iranian nuclear program. And then Iran decided that they're going to start enriching up to 20% again. Then in April of 2021, they did a sabotage attack at Natanz, which they took credit for and said that they did it, the Israelis. And it was after they did the sabotage attack at Natanz that the Iranians started enriching up to 60%, which they announced that they were going to do. At no point did they kick the IAEA inspectors out of the country, withdraw from the safeguards agreement. And they're not even in violation necessarily of their safeguards agreement. Now they are in violation of the JCPOA that America completely withdrew from.
Right.
And that they are technically still within, because it says in the treaty that if America stops abiding by, not the treaty, the deal, if America stops abiding by the deal, Iran can stop abiding by parts of the deal. They don't have to implement all of the strictures of the deal without breaking the deal. They can stay in the deal. It says in there, if America starts not doing what they're supposed to do, then you don't have to do what you're supposed to do again. So now all that's happening here is they're trying to get America back into negotiations so they can either get back into the JCPOA or something like it.
Thank you guys for checking out this clip. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It is a huge, huge help. And if you'd like to check out this clip's full podcast episode, that link is in the description below or right here. And finally, you can follow me on Instagram and X by using the links in my description below.